Episode 108 of the podcast, Cooperative Care and Force-Free Grooming. What do these terms mean? Because as groomers, when we're having a hard time with a dog, or more specifically, we're having a hard time with a behavior issue, we think, I'm not going to wait for him to cooperate. That's literally the problem I'm having. I can't just wait for him to cooperate. We get frustrated by training methods that tell us about cooperation. As groomers, we hear force-free and we imagine dogs running around willy-nilly and not wanting to be groomed. And I've been there. I just didn't get it. It didn't make sense to me until I shifted my perspective. You're listening to the Creating Great Grooming Dogs podcast. I'm Chrissy Newmeyer-Smith. I'm a certified professional groomer, a certified behavior consultant for canines, a certified professional dog trainer, and the owner of Happy Critters in Nashua, New Hampshire. And this, my friends and colleagues, is the podcast where grooming and training meet. Let's start with cooperative care. Cooperative care is teaching a dog to work with us. Straight up, that's what it is. Yeah. Teaching them to work with us. So what do we really want a dog to be doing? Before we can start really teaching, we need our goals in mind. So what are the first things that we should cover? We should cover the goals. What does a great grooming dog act like? What behaviors are we looking for, working toward, and encouraging? Now, first, I would say we're looking for a dog who stands still. We're looking for a dog who's easily repositioned. We're looking for a dog who is accepting of all of our tools. Right? We're looking for a dog who can handle the duration of grooming, a dog who can handle over and over and over repetitions and probably what's pretty boring. So that's what we're looking for. That's what our goal is. Now, if we want a dog to cooperate and do those things, what do we need to do next? And what we need to do is help them understand those things. And that's where training comes in. Okay? Now, a lot of that is not happening in the shop, right? If owners aren't working on stuff at home too, if there's no other foundation, it's not going to happen during a 2-hour grooming session every 6 weeks. It's just not going to happen. But I also want you as groomers, if you're a groomer listening right now, I also want you to start thinking, yeah, but why isn't it happening? Why aren't owners trying to work on it? Because often that's a communication issue. So if we want dogs to cooperate with us, and to be able to be safe for the care that we need to give, then we also need to help them learn that this is safe. Learn about the things that we need to do. I think we sometimes start thinking that we can just keep pushing and pushing and pushing, and they'll eventually figure it out. Or, I have to get this trim perfect. That's what this owner is paying me for. Which, I would like for you to change that idea. No, this customer doesn't know what they're getting. Sometimes the customer is always right and sometimes they're not. We don't trim over mats, right? We don't leave mats in the coat and give them the trim that they want. The customer's not always right. We can't trim over behavior problems and give them the look that they want if it's making the dog worse, right? So humanity over vanity applies to behavior issues too. So we need to teach the dogs to trust us for things that we need to do. And there are a bunch of things that owners can be doing. They can be simply touching their dogs at home with stuff and things and teaching them that it's safe and they can be trusted and that it's normal, right? That's part of cooperative care. Owners need cooperative care as much as we do in the grooming shop. Vets need cooperative care. We need the dogs to be able to let us do the things that are in their best interest. And that might be a beautiful trim. God knows. We want to do beautiful trims on dogs, but that might also be just getting them clean, trimming around a couple little areas, right? I want you to think about the average dog doesn't get handled the way that we do at the grooming shop, but not because the owners can't do it, but because the owners don't understand it either. You'd be surprised how many owners watch grooming, and because I'm a house call groomer, so they're in the room. I encourage them to sit down on the other side of the counter so they aren't reaching, grabbing, you know what I mean? Sit down on the other side of the counter, set themselves up with a cup of coffee, and we chat, right? They're shocked at how many things we do. And often they're shocked at how good their dog is because they don't know their dog has that kind of potential. So when we start talking about cooperative care, It's about teaching the dogs that this is safe, teaching the dogs that this is normal, teaching the dogs that there are just some things that humans are gonna need to do to them. Do them on them, around them, with them. And it's not supposed to be a matter of just totally free choice. Okay, so that's where force-free comes in. When people start talking about force-free, I think some of us, and I know me included, initially heard force-free and we're like, so what? I can't hold him still anymore? Like, what? So that means I can't just, make him do it? Force-free is more about teaching them to be part of what we're doing, right? They have some choices to be part of what we're doing. We give them a little bit of chance to tell us if that hurts, if that makes them nervous, if they're uncomfortable, right? But it doesn't necessarily mean that we're just letting them on the floor, and if they come over to the clippers, then we can trim up a little bit until they walk away. Like, that's not force-free. That's chaos, right? The dog that needs that is definitely being trained by trainers, not necessarily like in the grooming shop. That's not part of a grooming day, right? That's not like, oh, well, let's just shut everything down. We'll have one dog here in the grooming room and we'll just all put on our knee pads and wait for him to come over and put the clippers up against his own butt. Like that's not force-free. But it does mean that we're trying to not just clamp down and force a dog through something that they are literally trying to tell us is making them scared, is stressing them out, is frustrating, or is uncomfortable. We don't need to force them through those things. I think for a long time we all kind of thought, well, eventually they'll get over it. I mean, it's for his own good. We need to do this. When he realizes it doesn't hurt, right? But it's not about whether or not they get hurt. It's about it being scary. And if you force scary, they're already scared, they're telling you they're scared, and you just keep forcing it, you are making it more scary, or more frustrating, or more uncomfortable, or more frightening, or more stressful, right? It does not help. So when we start forcing a dog, we're literally making it worse. Literally making it worse. So from a training point of view, I look at forcing a dog through something that's scary as something that is counterproductive. We need to be thinking about force-free isn't about like just sending them out in the yard and hoping they want to be brushed. It's about helping them relax and allow us to do it. Allow us to work with them. And I know people are like, oh my God, a dog's not going to allow me to do it. Maybe she doesn't work with the kind of dogs I work with, right? But sometimes it's because we're trying to do more than that dog is able to handle. Sometimes that dog isn't ready to be in a grooming shop, right? Sometimes that's what the problem is. Sometimes that dog is having problems at home. That dog isn't touchable at home, but they brought him to a grooming shop anyway. And how often do we hear that too, right? I think a lot of the time non-groomers don't know the kind of stuff that we see where people are like, oh, well, I mean, can you get the collar on him? Because he won't let me touch him. Like, why do you have a dog at home that you can't touch? It's absurd to me, but we see it, right? So the dogs that really cannot be taught to be calm with us, it's pretty rare. A healthy dog can be taught to be a safe dog. A healthy dog can be taught to relax and to let us do the things that we need to do. We can build a trust with a healthy dog. Now, what kind of health problems would negate that? I would say that there are some dogs with brain problems, right? For whatever reason, they just are unable to learn, or their responses are so dramatic that we cannot trust them. I've worked with a couple of dogs that, let's just say, tech talk, like their brain just doesn't tick right. I worked with one that we know had a head injury of some sort, and who knows what that left her with, but I don't think Daisy knew what Daisy was going to do when she was scared. Once she was scared, her mouth took over. I don't think she ever thought about what was going on, just that a fear response was very abnormal because of, we believe, that brain injury, because of that head injury. Right? We know she had a head injury. It was an interesting case because we know that she had a head injury. So sometimes a dog has something physical about them that's going to keep them from being the norm. But a normal, healthy dog, emotionally healthy, right? A normal, healthy brain, that dog can be taught to be a safe dog. We need patience. Patience, and we need to build on successes, and we need to think about that goal that we have, right? Calm, comfortable, and cooperative. It's not about cooperative care doesn't mean, okay, this dog is going to choose to come over to me and let me do 50 million things. Now, trainers out there are like, well, we don't need to do 50 million things. We just need to do this one thing. Yeah, but groomers need to do 50 million things. So that's why it doesn't sync up with grooming. So it's not about like, oh, roam around the room and come back to me when you're ready for me to do like one scissor snip. That's going to take 4 weeks. That's going to take thousands of dollars in grooming. No owner is going to pay us what we would charge that. So there's that too. We are here to make a living. But if we think in terms of calming this dog down, teaching them that this is safe, teaching them that it's so normal to hang out with us, stand up, let us reposition them, be nice and loose in their body language, touch them with stuff and things. Those are the things owners can be doing at home. And then when they get to the grooming shop, we're just adding different stuff and things, right? Dog's been touched with all sorts of stuff and things, right? Give owners homework for them to be working on it in a way that builds trust and comfort. Trust and comfort. Right? So that when they get to the grooming shop and we're like, hey, here's a new stuffer thing, like, hey, here's a different one. Here's a different one, that the dog is so used to being handled and touched all over and that it's all fine and we're building trust. That's what cooperative care is about. And that's what force-free is about. Instead of forcing them through it, we're training them to be able to handle it, right? So it is very safe to use force-free and cooperative care, but it takes a plan. If you're enjoying this podcast, please remember to subscribe so that you don't miss any episodes and tell all of your friends. Now let's talk about force-free a little bit more. Why do some dogs have trouble being groomed? Why do they have a hard time? Because they're scared, they're frustrated, or they're stressed. And being physically forced to continue something that is scary, frustrating, stressful, or uncomfortable just makes it more scary, frustrating, stressful, or uncomfortable. And that may sound like an opinion, okay, and I get that. Maybe that's true. You might be thinking, I've forced dogs through it and they were fine. But if that were always the case, we wouldn't be having this discussion, right? If that were a slam dunk that works, we wouldn't be having this discussion at all. It usually does not work. And that's what I have observed time and time again in my own handling, because I was not always grooming the way I do today. I've definitely tried to force dogs through thinking it was going to work, and it didn't. So I want you to think about if it worked, every dog would be fine. We'd just force them through it, and they'd be like, oh, is that all you meant? Sorry, Chrissy. I'll be good from now on. And I know, I'm kind of making light of it. But really, think about that. Like, oh, yeah, if it worked, I wouldn't be... Like we're kind of in this stalemate. We're stuck using more force. So force-free isn't about just letting them run around willy-nilly, right? I just want you to think about forcing them through something isn't helpful. So we need to avoid forcing them through it. And that's where force-free comes in, okay? Patience isn't enough. Now, I do say that patience is super important, but patience also has to be directed. Right? We need to have some goals, and we talked about some of those goals: calm, comfortable, and cooperative. What do we want from a dog? Because plenty of people have a huge heart and a tremendous amount of patience. They are not trying to be mean to a dog while they force them through, while they're pushing a dog that's struggling and pushing them beyond a point that they can handle. There are some pretty horrific videos out there of groomers pushing a dog past what they can handle. The dog's tongue is turning blue and the dog stops breathing and they're like, oh, how did that happen? Like they don't mean to be mean, right? They're patient and they're loving. However, it is very, very misguided, right? But if you're thinking about force-free, I want you to think about it in a much more no-nonsense approach. Like, okay, I'm not going to force you through this. I'm not going to continuously push you past what you can handle. But instead, I am going to build what you can handle. I'm going to expand on what you can handle. I'm going to use training. And training doesn't mean that you need to stop grooming, and training doesn't mean that you need to pull out a clicker and treats or a training collar or, any of those things. Training just means that they're learning and you're teaching and trying to make this better for this dog. And that's really fun, right? We want it to be fun for them. They may never enjoy it entirely, but this should be pleasant. It's a haircut. It's a bath and a haircut. Tedious, yes. I think for many dogs, that's really what it comes down to, is it's tedious. They're standing around and letting us do our stuff, right? But I want you to think that the dog who's having a hard time, it's not a battle of wills, right? They're not trying to manipulate you. They're just like, I'm having a hard time. Why aren't you listening? I'm trying to tell you I'm having a hard time, right? The dog lacks education. The dog lacks the background to behave the way that we want him or her to. And that's where the cooperative care comes in. I'm going to teach you how to cooperate with me. I'm going to teach you how to do the things I need you to do. We want you to be tolerant. Be a good little dog. Let me do the stuff. Teaching them that it's safe. So it doesn't mean that it's totally free choice or free of restraint. Now that's another interesting part of force-free. People think, so we can't just... We can't use muzzles anymore. We can't use belly bands. We can't use grooming loops. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. But we need to use those as tools to help us steady a dog, control some of their actions, but not to totally manhandle them into getting something done. Those tools shouldn't be so that the groomer can get the job done despite whatever behavior the dog is showing, right? That's where we're forcing. What they should be is, okay, I'm going to keep you from spinning because you still don't know yet to not spin around on my table. I'm going to keep you from, doing things that are dangerous or doing things that are inappropriate, right? And to help them be good. We should always be thinking about what is our goal. We want them to be good. But let's talk a little bit about other ways that we inhibit a dog's free choice, because that's such a big thing right now for owners and for the dog owning public in general. Like, well, we want them to have free choice. We want to be force free. And it sounds so good, doesn't it? Right? And I know that's kind of the wishy-washy fur mommies, but I'm kind of there too, right? Yeah, I want my dogs to have some free choice, but not entirely free choice, right? Just like we don't really entirely have free choice, right? We wear clothing. Society mandates that. Yes, I wear clothing. I don't feel manipulated by it, and I don't feel forced. Why? Because it's so normal to me, and I have grown to like clothing. Although I think that with COVID, we're all finding a lot more people are realizing, like, bras, we don't have to wear those every day. That would be nice. When we were really locked down, we're like, ooh, no more shoes. But I want you to think about some of the free choice day-to-day examples that dogs don't really have entirely free choice, right? We do inhibit their choices. We do limit the amount of things that they can do. And here's an example. Collars and leashes. Collars and leashes. Dog doesn't have a choice to keep his collar on. So here's something that we're putting on them, and they don't have a choice to take it off. A leash. When they're wearing a leash, it's literally to keep them from going places that they might want to go. Now, they may choose to stay with you, and that's where choice comes in. We want them to choose to stay with us. We want them to behave in a certain way, and we want them to be comfortable with leashes. Another example, fences, right? I have a fenced-in backyard. I don't send my dogs loose around the neighborhood. Doors, they don't get to just go out whenever they want to. And those of us who do have doggy doors, it's not usually out to just free range wherever they want. Our society limits that. So many of us as dog owners also limit that. So even though my dogs are in a fenced-in yard, I don't think they feel like they're being forced into a fenced yard. Now, we really can't tell, but I will say my dogs could easily jump the fence. Easily jump the fence. I have two fences on two sides that are super low. It's really just sort of a visual barrier, like, hey, guy, I've asked you to stay in here, in our yard, where we play, right? But it's been associated with good things. It's a choice. My dogs choose to stay in my yard. And literally, they could jump over that fence. They have a couple times, but only because somebody did something that seemed like they were being asked to jump the fence. Anyway, side story. Here's another example of choice that we make for our dogs that they don't really necessarily have a choice in. Feeding times. Most of us don't leave food out available 24/7. Most of us have feeding times. My own dogs get fed twice a day. I choose when that is. They don't. Now, they can come over and ask me for food. They can come over and imply that they're hungry. They can look at what I'm eating and maybe give me sad eyes. And sometimes they might get something. Sometimes I might get something. Who knows? But I'm still making those choices for them. My dogs are not allowed to just grab whatever they want. If there's a sandwich on the coffee table, I expect them to leave it alone. Right? So those are kind of things that we choose. And then what do we also choose? We choose what they eat. So when we start talking about, free choice and they should be allowed to do whatever they want, I think that's extreme. We don't do that. We really don't. We feed them dog food or maybe a raw diet, but we pick what they eat, right? We don't let them eat a bag of chocolate. Why? Because we know that could be deadly. We know it. They don't know it. We're making choices for them in their best interest. And it happens every day. So let's not vilify groomers and vets who are going to use something like a muzzle or a belly band or a grooming table. I can't believe grooming tables get vilified sometimes too, But some of these things are about giving them some boundaries and setting them up to succeed. We want them to be comfortable with the kind of things that we need to do, right? So we need them to be comfortable with being in a tub because frankly, that's where we're going to wash the dog. It's in the tub. That's pretty normal. If you want your dog washed on your lawn, you may do that yourself, right? I don't think that's the service I want to provide. Like, we'll just run around the yard spraying them. So there are plenty of ways that we manipulate what a dog needs and a dog's limited choices that we put in. We limit their choices. So things like being on a grooming table could be limiting their choice to walk away. Now, some dogs might try to jump off a grooming table. Other dogs might be afraid of being up high on the grooming table. But it is one of the ways that we limit their choices. And I think that's fair. So force-free doesn't mean that you can't use a belly band to help stabilize a dog. It does mean if a dog is freaking out and they're alligator rolling, a belly band is not appropriate, right? They're barrel rolling, they're panicking. Let's strap them in with a belly band so that we can get this done no matter what that dog is going through. That's not okay. I know, that's an opinion too. Why isn't that okay? It's not conducive to teaching them to be good for it. So that's where cooperative care and force-free come in, is that they are in line with what we need in the grooming shop. Absolutely, totally, and completely in line with what we need in the grooming shop. What we need is a dog who is going to be comfortable with the things that we need to do. And we want to build their comfort. We want to build their comfort zone with the realities of a grooming shop. You're going to hear noise. You're going to get wet. You're going to have things that vibrate and things that make noise. You're going to be up high. You might be in a crate. You're probably going to see other dogs, right? There are some things that are very, very normal that we can tell the pet owning public, hey, here are some things for you to work on. Or, by the way, it seems that you didn't know your dog had a problem with this. Because the other thing is, too, a lot of owners don't know they have a problem. And groomers need to be able to feel comfortable to tell an owner, hey, he had a problem with this today, and this is what I recommend. So next time we book, we're going to do it this way. Yeah, own it. Own it. Like, okay, this is how we're going to proceed in the future. Does that sound good to you? Right? We're not going to, just keep forcing the dogs through it and telling owners, well, it was nothing we couldn't handle. Right? Because that implies the dog is good. And owners don't know. And then one day you're like, he really needs to be done at the vet's office and be sedated, which is not a good long-term solution. Think about that for a minute, because I hear it an awful lot, right? We force dogs and force dogs and force dogs. And then when we can't force them anymore, what do we tell owners? Well, probably time to get them done at the vet and have them sedated for it. Do you know how many owners struggle with sedation for legit medical problems with their dogs because at a certain age it becomes very, very risky for that dog to be under anesthesia? Now we're trying to tell them that that's part of normal grooming for the rest of that dog's life. Yeah, it doesn't float. It is not in a dog's best interest. So if we need to be planning ahead, that 7-month-old Labradoodle that just came in for its first grooming, it's totally matted with all of the crazy stories they've heard about Labradoodles, that, we need to get that under control and help that dog be good for grooming, to trust us and cooperate for the future. For the future, because eventually that dog is going to get old. Eventually that dog is going to have health problems, right? So cooperative care and force-free are about teaching them to be good. It doesn't mean just let him do whatever he wants. It's not permissive. It's about adding structure and goals. All about structure and goals, right? So I want you to be thinking about those goals again. Calm, comfortable, and cooperative. And we need to be looking for it, encouraging it when we see it, noticing when they change from that, gathering our clues, like, when did that change? What was going on in that moment when you changed from being calm, comfortable, and cooperative? What happened there? Gather our clues and then try to come up with a plan, right? This is the way forward. And this is the humane way forward. And it's in the dog's best interest. It's also in our own best interest.